Welcome back. Anna Shaw is still with us, and joining us now is Roxanne Klose, Assistant Vice President for Clinical Services. Both ladies work for Easter Seals Goodwill Northern Rocky Mountain. Thanks for being here, ladies.
Thanks so much for having us.
Absolutely. Roxanne, let's start with you. So what is a hospice plan of care?
So when someone chooses to come on a hospice service, what we need to do is look at the different ways that we're going to take care of that individual. So hospice is more of a holistic approach. We're looking at all different things as far as being able to manage that individual's care, and not just the patient. We want to look at the family as well, or their significant other, anybody else who's a part of that individual. So we look at things like, obviously, nursing. Nursing is really important, making sure that they have the medications that they need and any therapies that they need. Social work is an integral part of what we do, and making sure that they have the resources in the community. We also look at the spiritual care component, and what we do with the plan of care is we try to identify how many times we need to go and visit with that patient. So how many nursing visits, how many social work visits, and so on. So that's really what the plan of care is, and we reevaluate that every 2 weeks, making sure that we're addressing their needs.
That's wonderful. So it's not something that's just really kind of nice to have. Is a plan of care necessary for insurance coverage? How does that work?
Plan of care is a necessary component. It's the right thing to do. It is one of the stipulations as far as reimbursement is concerned from Medicare, Medicaid, the different insurances, but it's the right thing to do for the patient and making sure we're addressing their needs.
And I think you hit on this a few minutes ago, but maybe even a little more detail. So a hospice plan of care just really isn't about physical health. It's about other aspects. Is that right? Emotional,
spiritual. Having gone through the process with family and having somebody die, it's not just about the physical body no longer functioning. It's about that emotional attachment and the emotions that that individual has had, and how the family will be able to deal with it, the emotions that they feel as they're going through the dying process, and that detachment from their family. So it's definitely something that has to be addressed, as well as the physical being.
So the plan of care for the patient and the family, and so when it comes to the family, are there any other specifics that you get into? You've mentioned that just briefly, but for the family, what we're talking about?
So bereavement. Are they at a high risk for bereavement and being very emotionally drained when that person does go? Have they had a lot of loss in their life and where they need that support? And part of one of the criteria for being a hospice program and having that reimbursement from Medicare, Medicaid, insurances, and so on is a 13-month bereavement program that is offered by our social worker.
Wonderful. So what is your role in the hospice program? What do you provide?
So I look at my responsibility primarily as making sure Anna and the other hospice staff have the resources that they need in order to take exceptional care of our patients. So I'm a nurse first and foremost, and have been a nurse for a long time. But now, instead of taking care of the patients, I get to take care of my staff and make sure that they have what they need to take good care of our patients.
So at what point does a clinical manager come in during the course of care?
The clinical manager is going to oversee that plan of care and making sure that things are addressed. If there's issues with getting in touch with a family member or a physician because that patient needs something more, or if they are at risk for maybe wanting to hurt themselves, getting the social worker involved so that they can do an evaluation. If they are talking about not really knowing what's going to happen on the other side or after death, maybe that's the spiritual care component. So the clinical manager basically is that sounding board to hear what's going on with the different patients, and then can help identify the appropriate resource.
That's wonderful. So we were talking about the plan of care with Anna earlier, and talking about those plans to be tough because it forces the patient and the family to think about death and dying, of course. Can you talk about the process of developing that plan in light of everyone being in such a tough situation?
So what we try to do, the dying process is almost like labor. So when a mom is giving birth, they're going through all of these different emotions and these different physical feelings and so on. The act of dying is also somewhat laborious. And so we try to educate the families and the patient. These are some of the signs and symptoms that you're going to see or you may experience as you go through that dying process. It's kind of scary. And so what you want to do is help make them as prepared as possible. We don't always achieve that, and it still is very scary. And that's part of being able to look at the family, look at that support system for that individual, because once they're gone, that person has experienced death, and that's not an easy process. So we want to make sure that they have the resources that they need in order to be able to overcome that.
Can I just add something that I've noticed? I've been working with hospice nurses for just over 3 years now, is that when our nurses are communicating with patients, they are direct. They're very honest. They don't sugarcoat anything, because that's really not helpful. But they speak with so much compassion and gentleness, and I think that comes from probably their years of experience in helping people through those tough situations.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you for adding that. We have time for one last question, Anna, and so to you. The spiritual care component, that's part of what you do. Can you speak to that briefly?
You know, I feel just so fortunate to be able to do that work. Spiritual care in hospice is a little different from what most people might think of when they hear the word spiritual. It can be kind of whatever the patient needs it to be.
Awesome.
I may help a patient get in touch with a priest or a pastor. Some patients just want me to keep them company as a spiritual care person. Some patients need me to pray with them or provide some music. We have a really wonderful volunteer program in our hospice called Threshold Choir that can provide really peaceful, beautiful, spiritual music. And it's amazing how that can change the mood and spirit in a room. So there are lots of things we can do.
Thank you. We're going to pause for a quick break. Up next, we'll be talking more about hospice, and we'll meet another member of the hospice care team. Stay with us.